The first story I'm going to bring up is, like I said, let me give an update about what's going on with the investigation into the assassination of Marielle Franco. Now, this is from the Rio Times. It is a English publication for Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, or it's news in English. And something you have to keep in mind with even a lot of these establishment outlets in Rio and in Brazil, it's very similar to establishment outlets here in the United States. You know, things are glossed over, things are kind of covered up, things are whitewashed, and you have a particular narrative that they try to push, because what's happening in Rio right now, this has been getting wall-to-wall coverage for a week. There have been protests that have been going on, like huge protests that have been going on, and you're seeing the power of online activism. You're seeing the power of social media activism. So you have the establishment down there. You have the establishment in Brazil trying to, get a grasp on this story. So I'm going to read this to you guys. So just keep that in mind. The ammunition used to kill Rio de Janeiro Councilwoman Marielle Franco and her driver on Wednesday night came from a lot sold to the federal police in 2006 and stolen from a post office storage facility in the state of Paraíba, confirmed Public Secretary Minister Raul Jungmann on Friday night. So the bullets used to murder and assassinate Marielle Franco came from a storage lot that was owned by police. And it even gets even stranger than that, because you have some people out here who are saying, it's not the police, it's not the military police, it's not, you have people who are trying to put it on the gangs. And that honestly sounds like some establishment cover-up type talk. And that's because I had some people in the last video I made about, well, really one person in particular, and in the last video I made about Marielle Franco, who was trying to, I noticed was trying to deflect and take attention away from the police and the military police and try to put it onto the gangs. And look, the drug gangs and stuff like that. That might be possible. We all know from the stories that we see all the time when it comes to Brazil. We know that's definitely an issue down there in that country, especially in the favelas. So that's not outside the realm of possibility. Okay, but there are some things coming out about this assassination that's just very strange. And we already know that the police and the military police down there attack the citizens and murder the citizens with impunity. We know that. So it's a step up, to start murdering people in the city council. Like that's a whole different level of dictatorship. Okay. But let me just continue. Let me continue with the article. This is a quote. It says, quote, "The federal police has already opened more than 50 inquiries due to this unaccounted ammunition. I believe that these shells found at the scene of the crime were effectively stolen," said Jungmann. And again, Jungmann is the public secretary minister. So that's somebody in the establishment. So they're trying to say that these bullets were stolen. And again, look, that's not outside the realm of possibility. But let me not speculate. Let me just continue with the article. The official also links this to a lot of ammunition to the one used in Sao Paulo's metropolitan area in August of 2015, where in a single night, 17 people were killed in several spots around the region. 3 military police officers and a local police officers were convicted of the crimes. That is very important information. And that is information that people who don't want to believe the police or the military had anything to do with this, they're going to gloss over that. Okay, you had these same bullets, used a few years ago in a mass killing spree, basically, that killed 17 people in several spots, in the same region, and they found 3 military police officers and a local police officers who were guilty of that. The same bullets that were used to kill Marielle Franco. You know, so that's not a coincidence. According to a report aired on Global TV's main news program, the batch of ammunition in question contained 1.8 million bullets, which were distributed to many federal police units around the country. Okay? The report said that bullets from this lot were also used in crimes involving rival drug trafficking gangs in Rio's metropolitan area of Sao Goncalo between 2015 and 2017. So they're saying the bullets were also used in turf wars between rival drug trafficking gangs. Let me tell you something. There was a story, and I've mentioned this story several times before, that came out at the end of 2016 about the Chicago Police Department. And this was in The Intercept. And it was about how it was exposed because of some whistleblowers, some good cops, came out and exposed this massive crime ring within the Chicago Police Department, where they were basically running a protection racket, where you had the cops fueling a lot of the gang warfare in Chicago, in the south side of Chicago, because they were protecting and working with certain gangs against other gangs. So when I'm reading this, it sounds very similar. Okay, it sounds very similar to that Intercept story. All right, so yes, you have these bullets being used in turf wars between rival drug gangs. That doesn't mean that the police aren't still involved. That does not mean that, especially given the fact that we already know and it's been established that these bullets came from a lot owned by the police. You see what I'm saying? Like, so that's very, very suspect. Okay, that's incredibly suspect. Okay, so we shouldn't be ruling anything out, quite frankly. Give me a second. Let me that's incredibly retweets. Let me share a few things. Let everybody know I'm live. Get my YouTube link shared on Twitter. All right, so that looks good. All right, so let me continue with the article. Just keep that in mind, because just because the bullets are being used by rival drug gangs, that doesn't really mean anything. Well, it means something, but it doesn't mean what they're trying to make it mean. Meanwhile, police believe that the killers involved in the assassination of the councilwoman and her driver followed Franco for several days before the crime. So that's not necessarily unusual. It just means that it was premeditated. An aide to the lawmaker said she was approached by a stranger earlier this week asking about Franco's schedule. Okay? So videos from street cameras around the building where Franco held a meeting on Wednesday night shows a car following the councilwoman's automobile as it left the area. Police believe that is how they knew where Franco was sitting, since the automobile had tinted windows. Of the 9 shots fired, 5 hit the lawmaker. Miss Franco was shot to death after leaving a town meeting in the Central District of Rio de Janeiro. She was a human rights activist and a favela community resident who recently was chosen by the city's legislature to monitor the military intervention issued by President Michel Temer for the state of Rio de Janeiro. Now, that's also very interesting. I mentioned that on the last show that I did, where I talked about her assassination. She was actually chosen, as the article states, to sit on a panel, basically, to monitor the military intervention. So you had a very leftist, very socialist, very outspoken woman who represents the downtrodden and represents the underrepresented in her community, who is overseeing a very controversial thing where the military is being given control over policing duties in the local area. So this is basically looking like a military occupation. Okay, so that could have been an issue for some people. Okay, because perhaps they didn't want Miss Franco breathing down their neck about every little thing they were doing, especially if they end up killing more people. But again, we don't really know what happened. That's speculation on my part, so I'm just putting that out there. So that's. Let me see if there's anything else from this article. Okay, so there's nothing else from that article from the Rio Times that I care to read. That's the gist of that article. Now, there's an article from The Intercept that was just written today. It actually went live today. And I'm not going to read the whole article. The article is entitled, Just as U.S. Media Does with MLK, Brazil's Media is Trying to Whitewash and Exploit Marielle Franco's political radicalism. And the gist of the article is basically that Brazil's largest media outlet, Globo, what is it called? Globo News? Rede Globo. And look, I don't speak Portuguese, so I might be all kinds of butchering these names and stuff. But that's my that's my American way of saying this, pronouncing this name. I'm just gonna call it Rede Globo. And they're basically, like I said earlier at the beginning of the stream, they're trying to get a hold of this story. And again, like I talked about on the last stream about the similarities between, political activism by Black people in America and the similarities between that and the political activism of Black people in Brazil. The reactions are very similar. I mean, it's not identical. You know what I'm saying? You don't have a military occupation in, a downtown U.S. city. It's still they still have the regular police in charge until there's a major protest with Black people. Then it starts to look like a military occupation, but that typically doesn't last forever. What's going on in Brazil is something that's lasting. It's looking like it's going to last for a while. So there are differences, but there are a lot of similarities. And in many ways, you're seeing the same thing with the media coverage, where in this Intercept article, it's being explained that they're trying to get a hold of the narrative. I keep telling people the power of independent media, independent Black media, how powerful this mess is. Okay, we're talking about changing narratives. We're talking about defining narratives. We're talking about creating our own narratives. And you even see the power of this in a country like Brazil among people who are completely powerless, but they are creating their own narrative around this assassination, and the establishment figures down there don't like that. So they're trying to basically whitewash Marielle Franco's political activism, and they're de-emphasizing her activist work and what she stood for and things like that. And they're speaking they're using very universalist language to make it more appealing to some of the white Brazilians in the area who are kind of complicit with, just like here in America where you have a lot of people who are complicit with state violence. It's no different in Brazil. You have people down there in Brazil who are complicit with a lot of the stuff that goes on to Afro-Brazilians and brown Brazilians down there because it's not happening to them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just going to read two paragraphs that I saw that I wanted to bring up. It says, there were parts of Fantastico's reporting that were genuinely informative and journalistically excellent, particularly Sonia Breedy's detailed evidence-based exposition of how this horrific crime was carried out with such chilling professionalism and competence, convincingly showing that whoever engineered the murders knew exactly how police would investigate and exactly how to prevent detection. That is critical information. If we were just talking about some random drug dealers who, maybe they have a lot of interaction with police because the police are always present in their communities, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to know how the police are going to react. That's not the same thing as having behind the scenes sort of detailed information about how the police react to crimes and how they're going to react to stuff like this. So the fact that whoever, as the article says, whoever engineered the murders knew exactly how police would investigate and exactly how to prevent detection, that's another red flag. Okay? And then the next paragraph says that terrorizing fact is an important piece of the puzzle when understanding who murdered Marielle an important piece of the puzzle when understanding who ordered Marielle to be killed. Whoever killed the activist who devoted herself to denouncing police abuses is intimately familiar with how the police function. All right? So I'm telling you, me personally, what I feel, okay, and again, I will keep saying this is speculation on my part, but what I feel is that there's a considerable chance that some person in power was behind this assassination. Is it impossible that it was a drug person, a drug trafficker or something like that? That's not impossible. Okay, but it's also not impossible that someone with a lot of power and with a lot of privilege and who had a lot to lose, and most importantly, didn't want someone as popular as Marielle Franco gaining more political power in that country, saw an opportunity to do something to her, like murder her and assassinate her, and took that opportunity. That's definitely not impossible. Okay, they already have cops in previous instances who were found guilty and convicted of murdering civilians. Now, like I said, it's a step up to start murdering people on city council, but you have an instance from a few years ago before where you had a judge who was murdered. Now, I'm not sure if that was a cop who did that or if it was a drug trafficker, but it's just real crazy, man. It's a real crazy situation, and I just wanted to provide that update about the bullets and where the bullets came from. Okay, and because that's an important part of that story. So as more information comes out, I will cover it in the future.